Colleen, welcome.
Thanks, Melissa.
I am super excited about today's conversation. It's no surprise that addiction and alcohol drinking, all of that is like just on the rise. I feel like some of that's like because of COVID, and just a lot of that is just the way that society functions. Before we jump into that, I'd love to hear a little bit about yourself and your own sobriety journey and what that's looked like for you.
Sure. So I'm Colleen Ryan Hensley. I'm an advocate for mental health and an expert in mental toughness. My background is in performance psychology, so methods for peak performance, and I really want to take those skills to the masses. Right now, I really feel like, extreme athletes and military and first responders and these kind of, really stressful work environments, they have access to those skills, but they're so applicable to everyone everywhere. I was in the Navy for almost 11 years, from 1999 to 2010. I served mostly on board destroyers, so 2 ships. I have about 6 years of sea time. During that time, I was trained in a highly technical job, but my passion was for career counseling and fitness leading and like coordinating wellness programs on the ships and otherwise. So I got out in 2010 and did a lot of work in the veteran wellness sphere with a couple of really cool organizations. And then I moved to Dallas, and that is where I worked at the UT Dallas Center for Brain Health. I was there
Very cool.
on their warrior training team. So teaching high performance brain training to active duty military veterans, caregivers, and then everyone else as well, all populations. And now I have my own performance coaching business, and I'm launching a program called #BingingSober in January. When I talk about sober, I'm speaking to a lack of intoxication in general. So not just alcohol, not just drugs, but you nailed it. You talked about COVID. We have now so many things that we've already used as escape tools, right? To get away from uncomfortable feelings. Now we have more uncomfortable feelings. Now we have more access to those things.
Right.
So I just think all of that has really, really kept us from experiencing what is our actual real life.
Yeah.
Because we're just constantly trying to escape this actually really beautiful natural zest and energy that we all have, but we just don't even know it because we're doing so much to get away from the uncomfortable feelings that we don't want to face.
I have so many questions that popped up as you were talking. One question I have is like, what is high performance brain training? That sounds super interesting.
Well, that is a program at the University of Texas at Dallas Center for Brain Health. I urge everyone to check it out. Very applicable to everyone. They actually have I'll give them a plug. They have a big project going on right now calling it's called the Brain Health Project. It's no cost to participants. So you can check it out at centerforbrainhealth.org.
Very cool.
And it's based on that training.
Okay. And how does that relate to binging sober?
It doesn't. That's, I worked for Center for Brain Health. Well, it all, surrounds life and holistic health, if you want to put it that way. But no, my performance coaching business is separate from that.
Were there any principles that you took from the brain training into like habit formation and ways to have that zest for life? Because I definitely feel like habits are so key and applicable to having, overall health. Like I'm curious what your thoughts are in terms of like just your training overall, even in the Navy. I mean, yes. I'm sure you learned so many life lessons and ways to have discipline and persistency.
Yeah. I think all around, with UT Dallas and with everything, I've lived and experienced and teach, is that we have way more control over our experience and our health and our lives than I think we give ourselves credit for. So that's like a main driving force behind everything I've been involved in is, understanding, really taking the time to say, okay, what do I have control over here? And put your energy on that. We tend to waste a lot of our energy and a lot of our time on things that we really can't control. And so when we can harness that energy and get it back and focus it on those things that we can control, it makes a huge, huge difference.
Mm-hmm. Can you give us some examples of what that looks like? I had a guest on the show last year that talked all about the illusion of control. So I think we hear a lot about how we don't have control, and you're kind of saying the opposite, that we do have control. So tell us more about what you mean by that.
Interesting. Let's talk about the holidays coming up, for example.
And actually, this is going to air in January.
Oh, okay.
Thanks, Sammy.
Okay, let's talk about just our time. Let's talk about our energy in general, which is a huge focus of #binging-sober is understanding the things that we can control with regard to our energy. Now, what I'm really talking about, the foundation, is awareness, control, and balance of these things that we use to escape. We binge eat, we binge watch, we binge drink, we binge shop, we binge social media, we binge all of these things, hoping to feel better, but it really doesn't work in the end. And so let's say, TV. I love TV. I'll put that out there. That's one of my biggest escape tools that I lean on is TV. But if I spend too much time doing it, it stresses me out because I'm not being productive. It increases, my anxiety. It can trigger depressive symptoms depending on what I'm watching. It interrupts my sleep depending on what I'm watching. So the seemingly trivial thing of watching TV has led into all of these other energy draining experiences, right? Well, I can control whether or not I'm turning on the TV. I can also control what I'm watching, because those things are going to impact you, like if it's, depending on the genre, right? And then I can control if I do turn it on, when I turn it off.
How long?
With regard to life in general and dealing with, relationships, which I'm sure, all of us can relate to, we can control the way we respond, and we can harness our, inclination to react versus respond. And that in of itself is a huge energy saver / could be drainer if you're just reacting and, reacting to your life and to your relationships. So yeah,
I love that. I love that. And the phrase that comes to mind is control the controllables.
Mm-hmm.
I think we spend 99% of our time controlling everything out there that we don't have control over.
I feel like it's the illusion. Trying to. Yeah.
And that leads to frustration, anxiety, versus controlling the 1% that is ours, which is our own behaviors, our own thoughts, the way that we respond and even react to situations. I love that. Yeah. So when you say binging sober, it's not really about alcohol. It's really about all different facets of life.
Yes. All those things that we tend to lean on to escape. It's a process that I've used over the past 20 years, pretty informally. I didn't really realize I was doing it, to manage my own depression, my own alcohol abuse, my own post-traumatic stress, that kind of thing. So it's something that I carried with me. I started doing in the Navy and then carried it outside of the Navy unknowingly. And, a few years ago, I was like, wait a minute, I'm onto something here, because like I said, I'm a huge advocate for mental health. I've taken part in all kinds of therapies, alternative, traditional, all of it. And this is something that I've done for myself that has been a good supplement to those therapies and can stand alone. So It's something I really wanted to share. I think it's.
Can you unpack that for us? What that looked like for you in your early days of using it, and what was going on with your own life? Because I just feel like there's such healing in hearing other people's stories. That's why I'm super open about my own experience with anxiety and depression, because we can often look at people and feel like, wow, they have it all together, but not really realizing, you know what I mean? Remember that old commercial where the guy's like, I'm not only the president, but I'm also a client. I'm like, that's so me.
It's management.
About your story and what that's looked like.
Yeah, it's definitely management of those challenges. I it's a huge part of the acceptance of what the experience of life is, I feel.
Mhm.
And so trigger warning for anyone out there who has been, impacted by trauma around sexual assault. When I was in the Navy, I was 22. So it's 22 years ago at this point.
Mhm.
I embraced that stoic culture like you wouldn't believe.
Mhm.
I was an unfeeling robot. I had way too much to drink one night. Well, lots of nights, but this one night in particular, lost all awareness and control, which are the foundations of binging sober. And I was assaulted by 2 sailors, and I took full responsibility for having had that much to drink and didn't report it. I was at a training command at the time. I went to the schoolhouse like a couple of days later, and it was that Monday following this big party, and faced the boys that were at the party. I was like, I need to do this.
Good
I
for
faced
you.
the boys that were at the party and told them that if I heard them talking about it, if I heard them saying anything about it, that I would make them sorry, and told them to forget about it just like I would. And Melissa, I did. I pushed it so far down in the depths
Mhm.
of me that I didn't think about it until I got out of the Navy. It took 15 years. Well,
Wow.
during that time, I mean, that toxic energy is going to come up anyway. You're
Totally.
trying to push. I mean, that's why one of my missions is to talk about, and we can get back to this, but how mental toughness actually blocks healing, how our idea of
Mhm.
mental toughness blocks healing. And so, during that time, I became even more just heartless. I was mean. I was
Mm.
horribly abusing alcohol. I was self-destructive in relationships. I mean, name it, I was doing it. And it was, I was in my 20s. It was just like life was happening to me at that point, right? Like I just didn't have the awareness that I do now. And so, when I was on land, like at home, I was abusing these things and, escaping, avoiding any way that I can, not even intentionally, because I'd repressed this memory so much. But when I went out to sea, so we would go out to sea for 3, 5, 7 days, weeks, months, I would start to feel elated, like all the awe in the world, like just this like that natural zest and energy. That's the way that I can explain it, because that's what it felt like. I would start to feel that. I didn't have access to the things that I did when I was on land.
Gotcha.
So I was on these sober binges. That's why I call it hashtag binging sober, because I just didn't have access to that stuff. Now I know that is a very unique situation. On all of us can get on a boat and go out to
Right.
sea like at any given moment.
No,
But
no Wi-Fi. No.
yeah, that was back in early 2000s. So we really didn't have a lot of internet, and that kind of stuff was just coming onto the ships, especially. So when I got out of the Navy, I found myself wanting to escape to the sober binges, because my brain, my body had just gotten so used to taking these breaks from these things that I started to crave it. And that's one of the most beautiful things about hashtag binging sober, is that eventually, like the more you practice, because it's a practice, it's not perfection, it evolves with you, like it's a process. And so the more that I've done it, and the longer I've gone without certain things, because you like take things, I'm trying to like tease it without giving so much away, because we are, but like you take things away, like different things impact us in different ways. What impacts you might not impact
So
me.
you might take away Netflix or wine or something, like,
or a specific amount of it.
yeah,
Like we all have. So again, building that awareness around, okay, how much, what is it doing to me? How does it impact me? A week from now, how does it impact me? Like you just mentioned wine. Oh my gosh. I have trained myself to, if I am about to have a glass of wine, I know what's going to happen. And so the idea is that we all have our own individualized plan for if we choose to use those escapes, that we know what to do to reverse the impact. Like, let's say I do have a
Mm.
glass of wine, I drink tons of water, I get to bed on time, I have a high protein meal. Like, we all respond in different ways. So it's just a matter of knowing how to reverse the impact of those things. Or, as I was saying, I've gotten so like addicted to the sober binges now. Over time, it's like you just want to take those breaks. You're like, oh, I just, we're running around tired and sad and like all of these things. And so, I've been able to manage a lot of my symptoms through this process.
What do those binges look like for you? And what would that look like for the person that's that's curious about it, and how can they, figure out what's right for them?
Well, that's in the process that will be released in January.
Gotcha.
So there's like foundational parts of the process that I lead everybody through with instructional videos, downloadables.
Very cool.
Yeah. And then the main focus is a community. It's no cost community. And that's where we'll, hopefully everybody will want to be involved in that community. However, I do understand that, especially post-pandemic, oh my gosh, I have to force myself to be social a lot of times. So there is opportunity to just take it, do the process like self-paced or with, your friends or whatever. But it's not a whole lot of change at once. It's like, just become aware, become aware of what these things are doing, because like you were saying, like the uncontrollables, a lot of times we just haven't taken notice to these things that, we're blaming our tired on, say, our job or our kids or our this or our this or this. And a lot of times it's not even those things. I've noticed it's these other like insidious things. And I say insidious because these are habits. These are escapisms that our society has accepted and like lifted up. So why would we go around thinking that these are bad for us?
Yeah, they're rewards or treats.
Yeah. Which they can be. They can be rewards and treats. That's a good point. Like, that's what hashtag binging sober does. If you tell me not to have popcorn, I'm going to want the popcorn. You know what I mean? But I'll have it next week and that'll be okay. It'll be just as delicious, even more delicious if we want to get into the
science behind it.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that you bring up the word awareness. I've really been reflecting a lot about that just in my own life and how mindless I can be.
Yeah.
And how it's even like as small as like, did I do that already? What have I done? What have I not done? Because I can just go so much on autopilot. And whenever I'm on autopilot, I tend to feel ickier because I am typically in my head thinking about nothing. It's like ruminating thoughts.
Yeah.
Like for my listeners, I know like I struggle with like ruminating thoughts. And so I love the idea of being more present, because as we're more present, as we're more aware, we're more present. And I feel like that's really half the battle, don't you think? Just being
100%.
challenging ourselves to be aware of like what's going on in our moment.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much to distract us. So much.
Yeah. So binging sober, hashtag binging sober is definitely like a program that you're walking people through. Are there any like little tools or tips for the listener just today that's like wanting to get started, that they can practice that awareness or practicing that mindfulness to have that, responsibility and taking those first few steps?
Yeah. Where it started with me was journaling. Like I was just wanting to feel better. So I got curious. Here's a tip. Just get really curious about yourself. Ask yourself, I think a lot of times we go on autopilot, and with regard to like our perspective of happiness or wealth or success or these really foundational ideas, this is a huge cause of my depression, and I'm sure for a lot of people out there. Like your expectation for, let's just say, happiness, for example. We look at all these alcohol commercials and the chocolate commercials and the travel commercials, and we're like, oh, that's what happiness looks like, and I don't have any of that. So how am I going to get there? Well, that might not be happiness to you at all. Like it could be a very, very simple thing. So like get curious about your own perspectives and your own ideals apart from what society has been telling us.
I love that.
And then even on a micro level, like that's when I got down to like journaling. So you can reflect on, you know, those perspectives, journal that. But what started to make a difference for me was like, I mean, it's not as tedious as it sounds, because if curiosity is on the like the foundation of it, it gets exciting. But like I would journal what I was eating because I wasn't feeling well. So I would journal like what I was eating and then how I would feel like a few hours later or the next day, because a lot of times we don't take the time to do that. Just a little side note, but like things like this food coloring and these preservatives that are in our food, if I eat anything with like a yellow number 5, I think it is in it, like yellow or red, those food dyes that are outlawed in Europe, like they can't even use them. I literally have just been crying 5 minutes later. Like it is so,
wow,
promise you, like it's intense. If anything with that, it's just so just toxic. And we don't notice that that's happening a lot of times. And if there's, you know, anything else happening in our life, again, we can blame this other thing that has really nothing to do with the real problem that we're not seeing. So just get curious and reflect and just start there. Like you're saying, that awareness is just, that's the key.
Yeah. And what you're saying too, I think it's really important and is to not just be aware in that moment, but to have awareness for the minutes, hours, and even days that follow, because it's not like it always a instant, you know, reaction.
Yeah.
Just like if you have food poisoning, oftentimes that food poisoning won't come until 12 hours later, you know, and you're like, what was it that I ate? Sometimes you can pinpoint it right away.
Yeah.
But oftentimes we can't really pinpoint what's poisoning us because the way that we're being poisoned in so many different ways is so subtle and we get used to it.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So definitely having that awareness, having that curiosity. I think journaling is such a good practice. And I think as we're starting out the new year, I think those are just like very simple things. I feel like sometimes we can have like, I know one year I literally had like 100 things on my goal list for that year. I'm always like way too ambitious.
Pro tip, don't do that.
And then of course I get overwhelmed and then do nothing, you know. My birthday is in June, so that's always like my halfway like point through the year to like regroup. But I love that the idea of just starting off very small and simple.
Yes.
And I think curiosity is just often paired with compassion.
Yes.
Because as we're curious with ourselves, I just feel like we're so much more compassionate with ourselves. And to have that gentle process versus like trying to change all the things. What's like one thing you want to feel different? Maybe you want to feel different in the morning, or you want a different evening routine, or you want to feel differently when your kids come home from school. Like, what's that like one moment that you want to feel different versus like trying to change the whole thing and then white knuckling it and then getting nothing done?
Yeah, because I think back to, taking on the perspectives and the ideals of others. You don't have to be in the gym 7 days a week. Like if that's your resolution going into January and you're not in the gym at all, and now you think that that's what you have to do. I mean, it's gotta be baby steps and getting, we all talk about the why. I mean, it's very important. Why do you want to do it for yourself? Like what, again, the curiosity, the curiosity, getting curious about those things. Yeah, I've never been a fan of resolutions because of that. I mean, I think that the way that we approach it tends to set us up for, I mean, what is it, by February or March, like 95% of people have already failed on their resolutions?
I think it's like 8 days later.
Is it really?
It's like 8 days to 13 days. Like, 80% of us have dropped off. It's something like so staggering. And yet we feel like that's what we should be doing. We want change. Yes. We want things to be different, but I feel like for most of us, we don't know where to start.
Yes. Yeah. Because there's so much information out there. I say start with what you love, with what you like. I mean, like you said, okay, what is this one part of my day that I want to change? And then insert something that you feel is healthy and will get you toward that goal, but make it something enjoyable. Again, if you want to go back to the gym, where I talk to a lot of people who are like, I don't like running. Okay, well then don't run. Like you don't have to
Right.
run. There's like all of these other options. Just get moving. Like there are all of these other things, and you will find, even if you don't know what it is that you like, so try a couple of different things, but don't get, locked into this one somebody else's idea, somebody else's resolution, it needs to be personal.
Yeah. And I think to start small, even I think most workout, people who are really into fitness training will say we really only need to work out 3 days a week.
100%. Yep.
And then you need to be kind of like moving, gentle movement the rest of the days.
Yeah.
But I know for me, it's like, well, 3 days is like that can't be right. That's not enough. I need to be doing it a minimum of 5 days for an hour long. And so I think we put our own suppositions of what it's supposed to look like.
Yeah. Yeah. And that 3 days, I mean, that's very accurate. And because it's okay, 3 days for 2 weeks before you give up on your resolution isn't going to do anything. But 3 days consistently over
your whole life.
Yes, 3 days is so manageable. I mean, that's when you start to, see the impact.
Yeah. The other thing I like about the idea of hashtag binging sober isn't just saying like no to things, but it's about saying yes to things.
Yeah.
And I feel like as we say yes to things, inherently, it's more positive. Like you want to do that. So figuring out like, what is your yes? And I know for me, my big yes is I want to experience more peace. I want to feel more calm, to be more present, to enjoy the amazing life that I have. But unfortunately, anxiety robs me of a lot of moments. And so what would you say to the person, instead of trying to say no to all the things, like to find their yeses?
That is one of the biggest things that I've done is always ask myself, like myself as a child, what did I enjoy? What gave me that joy? Because as children, right, we're extremely present. We're extremely curious. Are you familiar with parts work and internal family systems?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I just didn't know the name.
Parts work.
Oh, I thought you said hearts. Sorry. Go ahead.
Heart. Well, there's a lot of this and that. I kept meaning to ask you that because that is what that's
foundational.
I'll get back to that. But asking yourself what you enjoyed as a child, if you find that you're no longer enjoying things, there was probably a point where you did. Or maybe it's this idea of what does enjoying look like? Because I mean, I had like toxic positivity, I would say, for a while. Like I had to look like this. And I had to I was hiding everything. Like enjoying something isn't necessarily like this extremely high energy, exciting thing. It's this idea of flow, right? Those things that you've done, maybe it's like, for me, it's gardening. It's when I've been jogging or cleaning and organizing, which people don't like to hear, but it's true. Like that's where time shifts, right? The ingredients for flow are the same for all of us, like extreme athlete or not, like time shifts, you lose track of time, you're in the zone. That, there's been a ton of research behind flow and finding happiness and meaning in life. Like the more that you can tap into that. So it's a matter of figuring out what those things are for you, they're different for everybody. I mean, I'm sure if I say cleaning and organizing, people are like, oh my God, ew, like what is wrong with you? I mean, to that point, it's different for everybody. So like find what those things are. And a good place to start is remembering back to when you were enjoying things. What were they? And they can be this, silliest, most trivial things, putting together a puzzle. I don't know. I know a lot of people who like puzzles or quilting or these kinds of creative things. And then if you're, not feeling that, then think about something, anything, and try it again if it's been years, and continue, just make a list of hobbies that you're interested in. And just start checking them off. Just start checking them off, going back to them and seeing if you enjoy them. But again, if you're not enjoying something, like you don't have to force it. If you don't like running, don't run. Like go for a walk, go kayak. Like there's so many other moving activities. There's no reason to sit there forcing yourself into something that's not something you're enjoying.
Totally. And I'm going to say this, I'm a big joy blocker because of my expectations. So I had the insight recently that instead of trying to be good at everything, I'm going to allow myself to do it and to be bad at it.
Mm-hmm.
I actually really like
Love
running.
that.
By running, I mean jogging.
Yeah.
So I'm going to be doing a half marathon in a couple of weeks. I'm way out of shape because of being sick, as you can kind of hear. My voice is all raspy, and I've been like in the land of the dead for like weeks. But you know what I mean? Like I'm gonna go and I'm gonna do the half, and it's not
Yeah.
gonna be the best.
Yeah.
But I'm going to do it, and I'm going to enjoy like the sights and sounds of the people around me and like what I'm seeing. And I'm going to do it, even though it's not going to be the way that I want it to be. I'm going to do it anyways. And I'm going to find things that I enjoy about it.
I love that.
I think a lot of us, especially I don't know if you're into the Enneagram. I'm a 2 hard wing 3. I love to perform. I love to like have achievements. And I think if you're like that, it can really like just take out all the fun of
Oh my
things.
gosh. Yeah. I'm a 3.
Mm-hmm. And so, like, I think just doing it and doing it bad, like all the things I love to do hobby wise, I'm not good at it right now because I'm so out of practice. So I think just allowing yourself the space to be a little kid. When you're little, you don't care how good your color is.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like you just like color. You love playing basketball, even though you miss like every shot. You enjoy like just taking the shot.
Yes.
So I think
That's
just
what I'm
having
talking about.
that fun, like just being present and engaged in life, and allowing yourself the space and freedom to be bad at it,
Yep.
or not to be like amazing, but to have fun doing it. I don't know. To me, that's just like so much more fun than scrolling Instagram.
Oh, 100%.
You know what I
It's just
mean?
once we've trained ourselves to do those things, we've gotta retrain. We've got to retrain toward other things. And it just takes that awareness, and then the desire needs to be there too. But a lot of times, even if that desire is not coming, because as somebody who deals, manages depression, like that desire isn't there a lot of times.
Yeah.
So maybe the desire isn't there, but if you can get to that thing, when I am having a low day or I'm feeling, blue, it is just journaling. It is something that I can, yes, I'm going to lay here and I'm going to be okay with that.
Yeah.
And I'm also going to do this thing, read a book, like a positive book, or read something, or do something while I'm laying there that makes me feel a little, better.
I think also too, when you're thinking about from the addiction perspective, one of the dangers of addiction is that you get that dopamine rush without any effort.
Yep.
And so a lot of these things, you're going to have to put effort into it. And you might get like a little tiny squirt of dopamine compared to a big squirt of dopamine with doing nothing. Yep. So when you look at the brain research, I remember years ago, pre-COVID, I went to a treatment center that did a lot of their work based on brain health. And they showed like brain scans and all this like really super interesting stuff. And they said it takes a full year for an addict's brain to heal. And so for a whole year, you're likely to feel low, and things that would have brought you joy. I imagine it kind of being black and white. Like maybe you see a beautiful sunset, but it's black and white, or you spend time with your kids and they're laughing, but you don't quite feel, it's 2-dimensional. Yeah. So I think to know whenever you're used to getting that quick dopamine rush from whether it be Instagram or food or wine, whatever, if you're switching and being sober, you're not going to get that big dopamine squirt. So just know it might feel a little bit less than, a little flat, but the more you do it, the more energy you get from it. And then you feel better over the long run versus like a quick squirt and then you feel terrible.
Yes, that. And with taking time away from these things, you start to notice, I mean, in my experience, all of these new chemicals, these new like feelings, these new, and it might be 2-dimensional. I mean, this is where a lot of like embracing the things that we may not consider the best things, right? We have these ideas of what's good and what's bad. Not like pulling away that judgment is pretty difficult, but understanding, like you're saying, understanding that that's the process. Like this is the process. So like having grace and giving yourself grace and going through it, even if you're experiencing, along my healing journey, like I'd start to experience like elation for the first time, like with hashtag binging sober, like I would notice like, what is this feeling? Like
this feels really good.
Like there's these new things, but then they're also on the flip side. Like we can't have these good things without these bad feelings. Sorry, that's just life. And so I would also start to, feel all of these other things that I didn't understand and didn't know. So again, approaching it with that curiosity is really, really important because it's pretty exciting. Like I ran, can I go back to the mental toughness thing I was telling you?
Go for it. Yeah, go for
it. Oh my gosh. So, I mean that, this, and I'll get back to what I was just talking about, but because I was so unfeeling, like literally
a robot,
literally unfeeling, like nothing. I was just there for my mission. I was a great sailor. I was amazing at what I did. But when the assault happened, that really, that idea, this, 90s version of mental toughness where it's rub some dirt on it and get back in the game. And, this resilience part of mental toughness is very, very important in stressful situations. But where we're missing the mark is including in our idea of mental toughness in that entire perspective as a society is that going back to the things that we're trying to avoid that we were resilient at the time in the face of, right? Well, make sure you're turning around and you're going back to the trauma, the painful feelings, all of that to process them because, you've got to process it.
Clean out the infection
in order to heal it. Otherwise, it's just going to come out in your life anyway. Like there's no avoiding it. You think that you're avoiding it, but you're not avoiding it. Like I was saying, it's coming out in my life everywhere. And when I got out of the Navy, and I didn't know this, and my therapist told me it took me years, Melissa, to like figure this out. Like all of a sudden, I was working through other things, relationship challenges with my now husband. I wanted to work through them because what happened was it was really him. Like I was, like I said, self-destructive in relationships. I would sabotage every relationship. I never had long-term relationships. And when I met my husband, I was inspired to not do that. Like I was like, I've got to do something or I'm going to lose him. And I don't want to do that. So that's when I really started deep diving into, you go into therapy for this one reason, but if you stay long enough, you start peeling those layers and again, getting curious. I mean, it's an adventure. You could say, I'm going to pay you $1 million. Don't ever see your therapist again. And I will tell you no way, way. Because so I was working with this woman for a while on other things. And because I had adolescent depression and things, that I was dealing with from that I'd pushed away as well. And eventually I started having nightmares and flashbacks and the trauma started coming up it was ruining my life. Like it started coming up and I was like, what is happening? And it's just because, and I didn't know that I finally felt safe enough. And I was like digging around enough that it was like, hey, time to look at me again. And so when I finally told my therapist what I told her was, I think I was taken advantage of in the Navy. That's what I said. I couldn't even say the words. That's all I said to her. Then I stopped seeing her for 3 months. I kept canceling my appointments because I didn't want to face it, because I didn't want to feel like a victim. Like I didn't want to, I didn't want to be the victim because I was so tough. Well, people, the tough part is going back there. That's the tough part. The tough part is not avoiding feelings. That is not tough. The tough part is going back to it and healing it. And that's what we need to include in our idea of mental toughness, because that's where the magic happens. I mean, once I said the words to her and said the words, the R word, which I don't want to once I said it to her, which I can say pretty freely now, it was like 1 million pounds. It was like I dropped 1 million pounds. And so I think a lot of times with a lot of us, because I mean, it's my personal opinion, and please correct me if you think that this is way out of line, but our brain is what tells us when something is traumatic. We don't sit there and have a discussion with ourselves of what's traumatic and what's not. Our brain decides that for us. So all of us are living with some kind of trauma.
Totally.
All of us. If we're not uncovering it and we're not healing it, then it's just going to come out in our lives anyway. So we can be sitting there. I mean, I was doing, I was not living my life. I was just avoiding. I don't like that person, and that's fine. I have compassion for her, but I don't like that person. My life changed when I went back to the trauma to finally deal with it.
Yeah. 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 I think that trauma really keeps us blocked whenever we delay it. I call it like the leftovers in the fridge phenomena.
Oh,
We
yeah.
just like push
Yeah.
it back there, and then we don't even like know what it is. And it
Yeah.
begins to contaminate all the good areas in our life.
Yep.
But it
That's
can
a
feel,
really good way to put
it
it.
can feel so scary to get everything out because it feels so messy at the time. And my informed consent documents, that's one of the lines, is like, it may feel worse before it gets better.
100%.
Because going through it is like so painful. It can feel like giant steps backwards. But as you're exploring, like, and that's why so much addiction happens, is as a way to keep all that stuff down.
Yeah.
But then it becomes this like vicious cycle that we can't keep up with it. And it's like so toxic and ruining our lives. And so
Yeah.
I think you're so right. Like, it is tough to be strong, but we really have to redefine what it means for us to be strong.
Yes.
And to be willing to see that like God made us emotional people.
Yes.
Like, that's a part of our the way that we're designed, being made in his image, is that we're emotional beings. Like, emotions are not bad.
Yeah.
It's what you do with them that's going to help you or hurt you. And so I love what you're saying, and being willing to, with a safe friend, with a therapist, you know, a mentor, somebody who's going to hold that trauma well, that's trauma informed, to be able to process through things. Because when we don't process it and see it, it really does keep us trapped and holds us back.
Yeah.
Colleen, this has been all so good. Is there anything that we left out that you want to hit before we end for today?
Well, just in line with what we were just talking about, if we all, like you said, redefine what this mental toughness means. I mean, imagine if we were raising our kids in a safe place to know that, okay, yes, you can be resilient in the face of stress, but then let's turn around and let's look at what happened during that stressful time. Like, if that were a part of what we did, like that would be a dream. Because what I've learned is that those painful feelings, the trauma, the uncomfortable feelings that we're consistently trying to escape, like you said, will always be there, contaminating everything else. But the thing is, our beautiful life exists in that same place.
Yes.
So if you're not going back there, go back there, because that is kind of the key. That's the key to unlocking everything else, to changing the experience. And I'm not by any means saying that things get perfect afterwards, after you heal. They do not. But there is a power that comes with the realization and with the, kind of the embracing of those things. You gain power over it. It becomes a separate part of you instead of this toxic thing inside of you that's contaminating things. So that's really what I want to say, is that. Yeah. Go back, because that's where your life is.
Yeah. In order to move forward, sometimes you need to go back and process the past. To be there, you need to be here, and see really what's going on. Where can we find you, and where can we start with the program?
So you can find me at Colleen Ryan Hensley, HENSLEY.com. You can sign up for updates on everything #binging sober on Instagram at Colleen Ryan Hensley, and follow the #binging sober.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Melissa.